Just take this step. The horizon will look after itself. Hello, and thank you for listening to the English version of the English-Vietnamese bilingual podcast, 3 Notes, 3 Quotes, và câu vài điều. In each episode, I will introduce you to a book through 3 quotes and 3 things from it that I find memorable. Stay with me until the end of the podcast to find out why I chose the opening quote of today's episode, as well as why you should give this book a try. Do you enjoy reading? If the answer is yes, do let me know your favorite genre. But if the answer is no, if to you reading is just trying to hit a KPI or a discouraging kind of pressure, then trust that you just haven't found the right book and the right reading community. Charlie Mackesy's book, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse, is a book that does not require you to know how to read or like reading to be able to read it. You just need to pick up the book and turn to any page. You can even skip the text on the book if you want, since the book also has illustrations. The first out of the 3 things I will talk about is also the author's preface. But if you want, feel free to skip to listen to this podcast from the middle. If you feel that starting from scratch is also a joy, then let's get to the first thing. When I started learning about reading habits, as well as podcasts and audiobooks listening habits, I came across a lot of articles and videos on how to read effectively, how to remember what we read forever, how to find meaning from the content, how to take notes, how to summarize. If you're an avid reader, whether for fun or for studying, these things are probably not a big deal. Whichever of these how-tos suits you, you likely have already done it. As for whichever doesn't, you also likely have ignored. But if you have stopped reading for a long time, when seeing all these things, do you feel tensed and pressured, and then procrastinate reading because you are afraid of not being able to read at that intensity? Or perhaps it made you came to the conclusion that obviously you could not read, that reading was not for you, and then you gave up? Reading actually starts as soon as you turn over a page and look at it, even if it's a title page with no words except for the publisher's logo. Whether you read silently or aloud, skim or devour every word, whether you glance at comics or listen to audiobooks, whether or not you remember or understand right away. Avid readers are too busy reading to judge other people's reading habits. And in the case that non-readers want to judge your reading, I don't need to say more, do I? If at this point you still have mental blocks, here's the foreword written by the author himself for The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. This book is for everyone, whether you are 80 or 8. I feel like both sometimes. I like it to be one you can dip into anywhere, anytime. Start in the middle if you like. Scribble on it, crease the corners, and leave it well thumbed. If you are already clear that reading can begin with simply picking up something to read, and yet you still can't, you still don't dare, you still have concerns, you still have reservations, this is also normal. Understanding alone does not turn into motivation, because thoughts and feelings are 2 very different things. Actually, this occurs quite often in life, not just with reading. You know that exercising is good, but you still procrastinate. Or perhaps you manage to exercise a couple of times before you call it quit. You know that if a high fever persists, you should see a doctor, but you would rather stay at home and suffer than go to the hospital. You get it, but you still feel miserable or stressed. You have made an effort once or twice. You can't forever, because the more you push, the more you feel drained. There are problems that cannot be solved with just understanding alone. You also have to let go of overbeliefs and obsessions at the same time to let yourself feel relieved and start again. If every time you read a book, you are worried about how others evaluate this book, or how others judge you for reading this book, you will just wear yourself out and no longer want to read. Find yourself not liking a book after reading some pages? You can put it down and read another one. Open the table of contents to look at chapter titles and randomly choose one to read. Totally acceptable, as not every book needs to be read from the beginning. The table of contents clearly exists for a reason. Rereading the book you dropped after a year has passed to see if the problem is with the book or with your old self. By all means do it. Buy a book and then wait until you feel spiritually inclined to read it. Just buy it and leave it there while reading another one. Reading 3 books in parallel, several pages from each book at a time. Bookmarks are included when buying a book precisely to enable this. You don't need to force yourself to read, just because some books are touted to be a must-read, life-changing, or self-upgrading. There is also no need to stress yourself over memorizing knowledge for a long time. You can't remember the details of all 365 days, what you do and what lessons you learn each day, but looking back after a year, you still become a different person. You don't need to remember all details or understand thoroughly. If you can read in a relaxed and happy manner, you are already a different person from the one reading in anxiety before. Let go of the obsession about what is right and what is good to read, and then just read. Or read and let go as you see fit. I'll leave here for you the second quote from Charlie Mackesy's The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. I wonder if there is a school of unlearning. There are times when I feel that we have exaggerated the significance of first times. I can't remember the very first book I read. I was too young at the time, and I think a lot of people would agree. The earlier the age you learn to read, and the more you read, the harder it will be to recall. In other words, the more you read, the less important your first book will be. Therefore, if you don't know which book you should pick to jumpstart or restart your reading, just open a random one despite your confusion. Even if it disappoints you after just a dozen pages, your time reading it isn't wasted. You have just figured out what your reading taste does not include. You can always put it down and open the next one. So let's just take the first step. If you're already reading, you're forcing yourself to read something you don't like, and have the courage to put it away and find another book. There is really no need to suffer from reading a book to the end, only to hate reading forever after finishing. Take the first step on the path of reading books you enjoy. Reading taste and reading method are things that will develop sooner or later, as long as you keep reading. Just read on, and you will find a book that does not just have one, but maybe even 3 things to remember it by. And with that, together we have reached the third quote of this podcast episode, located on the last page of Charlie Mackesy's The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. Just take this step. The horizon will look after itself. My 3 previously mentioned notes and the 3 quotes I just read are just small parts of Charlie Mackesy's book, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. It's a warm and tender read that you can flip through over and over again and see for yourself how different you perceive the pages each time. You don't need to read this book if you don't want to. Whether you read and love reading is much more important than whether you have read a certain book. Just try reading for some time and see for yourself. If there is a book you enjoy to the point you remember it by 3 of its lines. If you have already read this book, what is your favorite quote from the book? If you haven't, do any of the things I talked about earlier remind you of any other books you know? No one can read all the books in the world on their own, so don't be afraid to share the books you love with others. At least do tell me. I'm always here waiting.